Hi, my name is Adrian Reed, and I'm really pleased to be joined by Richard Frost, who is Enterprise Design Lead at Yorkshire Building Society. And Richard is going to be giving a really interesting talk at the IRM Business Change and Transformation Conference in just a couple of months' time. Now, Richard, your talk is entitled "Are You Caught in the Glare of Innovation Headlights?" which I think is a fantastic title on so many levels. And when I hear that title, I think about how organizations often know they need to make a major change, a transformation, but it's like they don't know where to start.
Yeah.
So in your experience, and I know you've got decades of experience in transformation, how can organizations even begin their transformation journey?
That's a big question to
I
start
know.
with. That's kind of the whole speech, really. Right. There's no one easy answer to that, and each organisation is different. I've been most of my career. I've been in two organisations: 30 years in one, 6 years here at YBS. And as organisations, they've been very different. One of them is very open to trying new things, innovation, and was upfront in funding those things and trying them out. And YBS, being a building society, a little bit more cautious about that and wants to see more early deliverable value from it. So I think, in the two organisations I've worked in, it's a different approach that you need in each one. So what I'll be talking about is how you can identify clues that will give you the sort of approach from my experience that will work in that organisation, and approaches that definitely won't. Looking for the opportunities. I think one of the key things really is getting senior buy-in to the idea that you've had, and it could be, that might not be your idea, it could be anyways, it could be their idea, but this idea of being caught in the headlights is just about making that first move and getting going. And actually, if you look through my breakdown of what I'm going to talk about, it's also about when to stop. When you look like you're going down a route which is perhaps going to not lead to a massive amount of value for a whole lot of effort, or when actually you've done enough, you need to stop because what you've built is temporary. Perhaps it's a demonstrator and you need to go away and rebuild the thing. Or when you can actually say, actually, what I've got is good enough, I'm going to make that live and run with it now and see what I can learn from it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Richard, because what I'm picking up on, if I'm understanding correctly, there is so the importance of context, and actually the approach. Although some folks in our community might want us to believe it, there probably is no one size fits all best practice approach, and it's about molding it to the context. But also, if I understood you correctly, you were talking a lot about almost experimentation is probably the wrong word, but getting feedback and adapting, and actually knowing when enough is enough and good is good enough.
Yeah.
So those sorts of themes molding in as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Context is absolutely vital. I mean, the context could be, we've got to do something now. The competition are doing something now. We need to respond to that. What might that response be? Or it could be, innovation is perfectly valid, but the innovation can take 2 or 3 years. We've just recently implemented our new mortgage sales platform, and that's taken us probably 4 good years from thinking hard and deciding to do it to making it live, and that's absolutely transformational for our business. It's been very successful and very innovative for us, and yet a long project, and a lot like a traditional project. Other things we've done have been really fast, and they've not been involving technology at all. They're just a simple change to the way we do things. I've started projects where we thought the answer was technology, and we get working on that. We build the technology in a couple of weeks, and we land it. And we start to get feedback. We understand why the problem existed in the first place. And then when you just ask a simple question, I'm sure you've come across this, Adrian, as an experienced business analyst. You ask a simple question, well, why are you doing that? And they go, oh, not really sure. And they go, well, if you did that, you wouldn't need all this technology you've just spent 2 weeks building, would you? No, we wouldn't. So quite often it's one end of the scale or at the other. You really need to think carefully but quickly about your context. We were talking earlier about my Lego rocket behind me.
Yes, yeah, we
Uh,
will.
and one of the greatest examples of innovation you'll find, if you've seen the film Apollo 13, it's when they have a problem in the on the way to the moon, and they've got no air. They run out of air in a few hours, and NASA basically have to build an air purifier out of what they've got on that spacecraft in the next so many hours. So they lock the guys in the room. Here's what they've got on the spacecraft. They throw it on the table, and they say, build an air purifier. So that's a here and now existential problem. We've got to fix this now. We've got so many hours. And like I said, others, it's the big transformational questions. You've, again, like the space program, you've got to break them down into chunks that you can understand. Some
Yeah.
transformational problems are just too big in one go to think about.
But that's really interesting, and a number of themes, and I mean the question, Richard, why are we doing this, or why is someone doing that? That's such a, often it can just floor us, or floor whole organisations sometimes. But it's interesting because I thought it was really interesting your comment or observation that actually technology isn't always the answer, and actually but sometimes it almost felt like. It almost felt like sometimes we have to go down a path. We need to explore a path to get us to a place where we even know what the possibility and the answer is. So there's an element of actually sometimes having to just almost, head in any direction, because until you start doing something, you're not getting any feedback, type of thing. Do you think there's an element of that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was Forrester used to call that street level strategy, and they would say that the analogy there is you were in Wall Street and you want to get to Macy's and in New York, and you know that Macy's is somewhere near the Empire State Building. So you look up and you can see that, and you go, "Oh, I'll head in that direction." And you might head up one street and across an avenue or whatever, and get a bit closer, and then you'll look up again, and you'll find you've gone a bit too far in that direction, and you just need to correct. So yeah, I think that is definitely a great strategy to get out of that headlight glare. Just do something.
Yeah.
Build an app, see what customers think about it, see what's missing, what did we learn from that, what did we learn that we can use, what did we learn that we can't use, and just keep iterating. That's a great strategy to get you going. It's not an easy one to sell to investors.
Yeah.
You might have to mask it as something else. So, if where I am now in our commercial division, it's very much about, how can I increase sales? How can I increase savings income? How can I retain customer funding in the organization? So everything I do, innovative, has to somehow ultimately lead back to that in some way. And yet there's a huge desire to try these new things. But you've got to do that without asking too much and without upsetting the stuff that's making you money at the moment too much as well.
And it's that sort of, I suppose, risk and reward. The risk comes into the question as well. So it's a really rich and complicated context.
Yeah. I mean, part of what I'll do on doing my talk is I'll use examples throughout the 30, 40 years I've spent doing this. Back in the 80s, I say in my description as maverick. I guess what I mean was I was taken on as a programmer in a building society, and I didn't write any building society systems. I developed an email system in the 80s, and things for displaying huge graphics on walls and things like that. I was the guy who did the odd little projects on the side, and the way some of those were funded were directly against a specific need. Other things were, we don't really know a lot about that. Let's build something and see what it does. And other times I worked in a thing we called a test zone. So you'd ring fence an area, you had your own personal funding, you do what you like with it, but you reported back what you were achieving. Right up to nowadays, where everything's sort of almost business case led. But and I know some things are really it's gut feel, and how do you get backing for those gut feel projects? They're the really hard ones, I think.
Well, that's that single bullet point could be a presentation on its own. I think,
Yeah,
Richard,
yeah,
it's a really challenging one. So fantastic. And I mean, I know I've seen you speak a few times. In fact, I think, Richard, the first time I saw you speak, if I remember correctly, you were talking about robotic process automation.
yeah,
This was a few years ago, and I still remember it, which is always always a really positive sign. So I'm sure folks will be watching this. They'll be wanting to come and see your session. But in terms of the conference, just briefly, Richard, because I know we've both been to the conference a few times, and
yeah,
I find that the BCT conference really, really valuable. And one of the reasons I find it really valuable is it's multidisciplinary. So
yeah.
I'm a business analyst, but actually I recognise I spend too much time speaking to other BAs. So the BCT conference is somewhere I can speak to other folks. What would you say attracts you to the conference?
Okay, so I'm an enterprise design lead. Most of my recent career, I would have been called an architect. And so I spend a lot of time going to architecture and technology type conferences and business ones and CRM ones. And what I really like about this one is I get to meet people with business problems, and people that I wouldn't normally meet. So, as you said, it's multi faceted, people from all different backgrounds and organizations, not so much on the vendor side. There is some of that, if you want that. They do put the vendor sessions on during the breaks. But I really like hearing how other people have tackled similar problems to I've had, and it really gives you pause for thought, and then you can connect with that person afterwards and sort of home in on, well, why did you choose to do that? I mean, essentially my talk is, how I tackled certain problems. It's not really technology led.
Mm.
It's about business problem led. And a lot of the speakers, and I'll be doing this, they might speak for 2/3 of the time, and then there's a third of the time you can spend really talking about some of the things that have hit home with audience members. So I like that as well. It's quite relaxed. There's not a hard sell going on there. I've been
Mm.
to them all, and I think each year it's got better. Um,
Yeah,
but,
I think that's true, and I agree, Richard, as well. The networking I always find really really useful. There's the content is great, the Q&A is great, and then you can go and grab the speaker over coffee or find other people in different disciplines. So
yeah,
so fantastic. So your session is at 10:15 on the 18th of March. So people can book their slots now. So Richard, thanks very much for taking the time. And well, if I don't see you before, I'll see you at the conference.
I'll see you there. Thank you. Look forward to it.